Hi, welcome to week 3 of the Greatest Secret book group. We're on to chapter 4 this week. This is the book, by the way. It's a lovely hard copy book if you want to get one. So we're on to chapter 4 and it's titled You're Dreaming, It's Time to Wake Up. And I want to focus particularly on something that Rhonda says on page 77. I'll just read you this little section and then I'll talk a bit about it. So she says, the first step to freedom is when we understand that our thoughts create our life. What you think is what manifests. You won't have the life you want if you give your attention to thoughts of what you don't want. And you will have the life you want if you give your attention only to thoughts of what you do want. When you understand this fully, you become very aware of your thoughts, and it puts you well on the path of awakening. Because your awareness of your thoughts not only stops you from believing negative thoughts, but it means you are becoming more aware. So when I initially read that, I was kind of like, oh yes, and that's not the full story. But then I realised how she does acknowledge that, because she says at the very beginning of it, the first step. And she says, puts you well on the path of awakening. So she's absolutely not saying, this is the answer, the whole answer, and everything is in this. And she acknowledges that, she said that about her book, The Secret, and she said that in interviews. The secret, she realised, wasn't the full answer. In her own awakening and writing this new book, The Greatest Secret, she'd seen how the secret was like step 1, and there was more. And that was my experience too. So years ago, probably like 5 years ago, I started using positive psychology approaches like reframing thoughts and writing 3 good things every day to shift my experience from always being in the negative, not always obviously, but being more in the negative than perhaps would be preferable, and shifting it into a towards state, into an open state, into a positive state. And to Rhonda's point, it's a great first step. It's a great first step to see that as we change our thinking, our experience of the world changes. So things don't look like such big problems. You notice more good stuff because you're on the lookout for good stuff. So you are more easily grateful and more easily able to see what's going well, rather than what the propensity of the mind is to see what's going wrong. Let's find all the faults. Let's find all the problems. Let's judge the hell out of the world. So it is a great first step in terms of shifting us into a positive experience of life. And then I came into this work, and in the early days, I very much saw it as, we can just ignore all the thinking. We can ignore everything that's going on in the mind because it's all made up. None of it's true. Just live life. Just get on with what's happening. And when the mind starts telling you something, just carry on. Just don't listen and carry on. And that was also amazing. So for a good number of months, probably up to 6-9 months, I lived in that space of knowing the deep okayness of who I am and seeing that the thinking was irrelevant. It really was not necessary to follow it, to listen to it, to engage with it in any way. And so that was really amazing for a while. And then that also seemed to reach an end point where I guess it was like the world was still showing me things that I thought it shouldn't be like that. Or I was still having reactions to situations where I thought, no, there feels like there's something else still available. And that's what led me into work, which then explored from the knowing of who I am as awareness. It explored the world as a reflection of my mind, but at a deeper level. So where it's quite easy in positive psychology to get to those conscious thoughts and reframe and change and follow the positive and not the negative, and so we see a positive life, but that comes to an end point because it's pretty tiring and it's not really getting to the heart of the matter. It's staying quite superficial. in my second stage, I can see that there was a genuine wiping clean of the mind. But as often happens, the mind will then come back in and it will go back into its old repetitive habits. And that's what happened to me, and hence this next stage of my exploration, which was to see that everything in my experience was a reflection of within. And the world was appearing as a function of where my thinking was in that moment. And what was really brilliant about that was that it wasn't explored from the perspective of, right, well, let's change your thinking to make sure you get the right kind of world. Explored purely from the perspective of, well, let's just see the thinking. Let's just see if this situation looks wrong. Let's just see what that's revealing about the subconscious mind. Let's just see what that's revealing about the deeper thoughts which perhaps have stayed hidden till now, because there's so much an automatic pilot that just not even noticed. And so there was an amazing process through that of bringing to the surface, knowing that the outside world was actually the mechanism to bring to the surface the thinking that I couldn't get to consciously, and which the wiping clean of the slate hadn't reliably cleaned off, if you like. It was just seeing it all, bringing it all up, seeing it all, seeing it for what it was, understanding the logic of that subconscious programming, and therefore, well, of course the world looks like a problem in that situation then. Of course that looks terrible. Of course I look terrible if that's what I'm thinking. And so there was this genuine stage of understanding and loving and honouring all that subconscious that was leading to this reality. And then bit by bit, that combined with the recognition of ourself, who we really are, that which is true, which never changes, both of those then, bit by bit, the activity of the mind lessens and lessens and lessens, because there's no longer resistance to it holding it in place. There's no longer an idea that somehow it's doing the wrong thing. There's a recognition that it's working perfectly, and its activity is revealing to us our own confusions. It's really amazing. And so as we see it for what it is and understand it in that way, it just gets quieter and quieter and finer and less of an influence in our experience. And then the world really starts to align with what's deeply wanted. It really starts to align with who we know ourselves to be, as peace and love and connection and joy and freedom. And so I guess I just really want to highlight how Rhonda's so right. That first step of recognising positive thinking and putting negative thoughts in the cupboard is a great first step, because it really starts to shift your experience. And know that it's not the end of the road. There's an amazing road that lies ahead of you, and your road will be perfect for you. So I've described today my own experience, my own journey. If you ever wanted to talk to me about who I worked with in different stages of that, or what I would recommend, then I can totally point you in various different directions, as well as obviously myself as a guide in this work. But yeah, really, it's your path, it's your exploration. And so the only thing you ever need to keep doing is checking in with yourself and with your own experience. Is this really having me feel more aligned, more loving, more joyful, more in connection with myself and with life? And that's really our guidance throughout this whole thing that we call a life. And that's the thing which guides us back to who we really are. So I hope that's been useful for you. And as I say, do reach out if you want to talk about this and talk about all the different ways of exploring and yeah, what's available to you. And if you've been loving these videos and you'd like some more content, then join on Patreon as a member, and that's where I'm sharing other content, so my own writing as well as other resources that support the reading of this book and this exploration. And yeah, just get in touch if there's anything else you want to know. But thanks for listening. See you next week.